Hi, and welcome to Commerce Consults with Logic.io, where Blake, our VP of Marketing, and our team of configuration experts break down the experience and usability of B2B e-commerce sites across multiple industries. Today, we're consulting Hewlett Packard Enterprise, or HPE. HPE was founded in 1939 and is known as the original Silicon Valley startup. Headquartered in Houston, Texas, HPE earned itself a household name through its global prowess in providing IT and cloud-based solutions to customers. With 60,000 plus employees worldwide and over $28 billion in annual revenue, HPE believes accelerating is what's next. Let's take a look at their website to see if it's accelerated as quickly as their products.
Okay, we're here for another Commerce Consult. I'm here with Fazal Gupta, who is our VP of Product here at Logic. The first company that we're going to look at here is going to be HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So Fazal, let's get right into it. Starting here on the homepage, how easy is it for, if a prospective buyer is landing on the page here, from your perspective, how easy is it for a prospective buyer to actually find the types of products that fit their needs and fit their requirements based on the structure here?
Makes sense, and thanks, Blake. Very excited to be part of this conversation and this walkthrough. So looking at the homepage of HPE, I think at a high level, it's pretty interestingly organized, and it's actually pretty well organized in that sense that they've listed out sort of all the different offerings they have. They even list out the hero image, which tells you some immediate offers, which is a pretty good way to captivate sort of the audience immediately, especially in that point in time. And the part that which I think is interesting is different ways they allow you to at least look at the solution you're interested in, right? So if I'm a net new buyer, let's say, who hasn't bought from HPE before, which may not be that common, but still there are people who may not have bought. For them, it's easier to understand through different dimensions how they want to approach the product, because they may not know exact server number or the server product, but they may know the industry they are in, or they may know the kind of workload they're trying to run. So I think that perspective, it is good. They also, I think, which is a pretty good format many modern websites are applying, is they have a lot of images and a lot of information which is on a single page, because if your device of choice is more of a mobile device, you probably don't want a lot of navigation clicks. You want to be able to scroll through and see a bunch of information. So that part is good. I would say it's a little confusing in terms of sequence, because if you look at, they had the initial information about their products, but then their promotion is sort of in the middle. They had the hero image at the top. So it's just a little bit hard for me to orient what part I'm looking at.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's, one thing that stuck out to me too that was interesting is the fact that, like you mentioned, they are calling out individual products with the individual price points here. I feel like that's something that's more of kind of like a B2C type of mindset that they brought into this more B2B site. So that was interesting.
Yes.
And I agree, by looking at the kind of find your solutions section here, they're almost providing a separate type of navigation for the buyer here. So once you kind of, as a buyer, figure out, okay, this is where I want to go, let's go down one of the paths here. How easy is it for you to actually go and identify the product within one of these categories or within one of these subsets?
Exactly. So for this exercise, I'm thinking, why don't we think about somebody who's a new buyer, potential buyer for HPE product, right? And I come in, I kind of know the space, but I don't know exactly what product I'm looking for. But the way I probably want to do this is I'm going to look at my workload. So as a buyer, I know what my company is interested in. So I could say, well, I'm interested in this HPC and AI storage, for example, right? So I'm running, for example, I could be a company running some large analytics company trying to run some artificial intelligence, machine learning workloads, and HPE potential servers could be used. Now, if I go in here, I think this is where things get a bit more interesting, and probably some scope of, how transitions are happening in the e-commerce world right now, where you suddenly see you came from a pretty nifty looking page to a pretty dry looking page. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just like the contrast of navigation was pretty interesting in my view, because it kind of lacks that consistency. But the good part is now I'm kind of in the storage software space. So something interesting is it threw me into a pretty specific product, which in some ways is good, but in some ways it can be argued that the user would have appreciated a little bit more guided selling to have the thread, right? So I said I wanted the AI workload, which is pretty basic statement I said, and I ended up in this HPC storage software. For me, just it's a little disorienting to know, well, how did you decide that was it? Like, you are not taking the user on the journey with you, which I think is a little bit something which can be done better in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. It's leaves the potential for bringing someone to a place they didn't expect, which isn't exactly ideal for the buying process. So it makes sense. So what happens from here, right? So let's say you do land, this is where you want to be. How do you go about actually getting kind of the details on the product that you want and actually going and take those next steps?
Exactly. So let's look at it. So if, again, being in that user mindset, when I see this page, I think now there are a few things which make it a little bit confusing. So if you see here, there is a keyword search. It does say this is sorted by relevance. I'm not sure what exactly is being sorted by relevance because there is only one type of platform supported, right? So it's pretty, as a user, I would probably want the platform to do the work for me rather than forcing me to do the work. I think generally I'm a lazy guy, but I think generally people tend to get lazy. They don't want to do something which is obvious, right? And the system should already understand. So I think this layout is just a little bit odd in that sense because maybe it is just for this product. Like, it's understandable that they built a more general website, but I think people are more interested in personalized experiences. Like, I don't care what rest of the stuff exists on this website. I want a page which is very specific to me. Right. So I think this part makes it a little bit tricky. This information here is a little bit distracting because it says shopping made simple. I came in saying I wanted AI workload. I'm seeing a product. I'm seeing on the right hand side couple of products also for which I can get the code, which is good. I'm not sure what this is supposed to do. Right. So it's just the page is not really tuned for the search or the intent of the buyer. That's, I think, one problem. And the second problem is there is information which could have been pre-selected for the user and shown to the user with the right messaging so that they know why they are ending up at this page and what information now they need to fill next. So that part is where I think they kind of lose the user connection with the user on what the user wanted and what they are showing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's something that we've seen on a lot of B2B sites in general. It's companies are so focused on the detail that's on the actual product detail page and giving all the details and specs about it once they get there, that actually getting someone to that point is where there can be a bunch of drop off in terms of their conversion and in terms of, the path that they're leading or not leading customers down. So,
I mean, if I was, and this is more generalized, so not always doesn't apply, but it's great that they have somebody, they are probably running either a chatbot or some sort of a chat mechanism. It's a good thing because they are trying to connect with the user. Reality is, if users can do something on their own, they like to figure it out, right? I don't think I'm ready yet to talk to somebody, especially given the audience of this kind of a purchase is going to be more technical people. Many of them will want to just figure it out a little bit further before they talk to someone. So while this is useful, I think it's a little premature, and putting some of that guided selling or sort of a guided experience for the user, which is more personalized for the workload they wanted, and then showing them the product with some explanation why this is the right product for it, would have been very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that same vein of what you're just saying, so if a customer does come here and they want a self-service, right? They come to this page. What happens when you go and go to actually get a quote or figure out what the price is for something like this?
Exactly. So looking at this page, I'm going to say, well, HPE cluster extent file systems. I'm not sure what that means. There is some description here, which is good. I'm not sure how it is related to AI, so I'll probably read some more information here. Again, not exactly obvious to me what that could mean. So one thing I might do is get into this page itself. Now here's sort of the next thing which makes it interesting, and there's, in my view, probably some scope to improve, right? So the good part of this page is there's a lot more information here. So that's good. In some sense, I can exactly see what this particular product offers, right? I can see exactly the information I had before. There's also PDF and quick specs. If I'm really getting into the guts of it, I probably want to see that information. Or I can also see some of these, or the information is organized, key features, and there are some additional resources. Now, here's the part which I think could improve a lot more. Again, this is very statically defined textual information, which is putting the burden on the user to read it and understand, rather than asking the users those pointed things to say, okay, so you wanted AI workload, you came into this product, I have those two pieces of information. I can show you relevant messages on why this product makes sense, what is the advantage. I am not comparing yet, but you can still provide some information because user is kind of doing a relative analysis of what they are trying to buy. And then instead of having these pieces of information just written as text, having it organized in a way that you want to understand what is the storage space. I want to understand what is the processing power, right? I want to understand the example applications which are running on it. Just simple 2 or 3 things you could pick, right? Having that information organized in that taxonomy makes it hugely easy for the user to understand what they are looking to buy, right? So that's the other part where I wouldn't say this is where I think a configuration or a commerce logic engine kind of a solution helps a lot, because this is the piece you don't have yet. You can only put up a website static image or static text, whereas the user can want a more dynamic experience here rather than the static text.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, what actually happens when you go, because obviously here, there's a lot of different variables and specs that go into what's actually going to price out this product at the end, right? Are you ever able to get to a price here, or what happens when you actually click through?
Yeah, that's what I was trying. And I think reality is, because I guess the products are too complex and they haven't really modeled that information online, there is no information about pricing. It basically is expecting me to fill up information which somebody can reach out to me afterwards. So it's good that they are trying to capture user intent. I think the challenge is, if they are a user who is not that patient or is not that incentivized to really buy from HPE, you have a high degree of chance that you're going to lose the user at this point in the funnel, because I'll probably start doing another Google search to look at competitors and see if somebody else can provide me more information easily in a digestible manner and actually see the price. So neither I could see the price, neither I could really get a good next step, instead of putting this information and hoping somebody will call me. I think that becomes a little bit tricky.
Yeah, to your earlier point, right? If you're going through all of this process on the site, you want to self-serve as much of the process as you can, and you're kind of just you're actually extending the process in a lot of ways by making them go and reach out and fill out all these fields, right? And getting it to them that way. One thing that I did notice, Fazil, if you come back to the homepage and you scroll down a little bit, and you click on that HPE Proliant DL20, if you click in there, I noticed that they did have a configurator on this page. Did you see that as well?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It's good part, there's some information and some products which have more details around it. The tricky part is, how do I know as a user? I have to kind of discover it by accident, right? So even if you don't have configuration all across the board, but there are some pieces which can highlight to you exactly, you can get more details, might be very beneficial. So exactly as you said, we came into this Proliant product, and there is some more information here, because obviously I have the basic pricing, which is very useful. And I also have this solution/configure, where I can actually see different products. I can see some details for those. If I wanted to, let's get into the view details view. this is not that interesting because it kind of brings you back to a very textual format. And it gives you good details, but not much else. And because it is the first thing, kind of, it fixates the user to just look at that piece of information first. But as you scroll down, this is where they have some configuration. So now for this particular product, they do provide a decent experience of all the information. Majority of it is textual, but some of it is very specific to a configuration.
Yep.
So if I was to go through this, right, let's say staying in that buyer persona, I was looking to run some AI models. So I was like, well, looking for the most powerful application. I think this didn't really do much. Shows me a processor, again, making me select some basic things. And as you can see, part of the problem is it refreshes the page and brings you back to the top of the page, right?
Right.
As a user, that's very disorienting because I just clicked on something. I'm not sure if did it work or did something broke. And
Right.
I don't know what I'm seeing here, what is changing. But so rather than selecting all these categories, I think the categorization is good so that there is some attribution, but the experience can be a lot more fine-tuned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I'm at this point, I can still select configure and buy. Now I have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. These are good components. These are sort of very product-centric configuration you're doing. I still think, going back to our original point, part of the challenge is you're losing user at each of these journey points, right? Because I came for a workload, I selected that workload, I selected some power settings. There is pretty much no messaging for the user to know why I'm selecting the things now I'm selecting, right? I might be an expert user, I may be more of a business user trying to buy it, let's say, from a procurement team trying to buy something for the company. This is going to be harder for me to do, right? Then that's the other problem. But if I look at the configurations here, I can select the pricing information shows up, the quantity shows up, which is interesting. And it also tells you like how many slots are available. That I think is useful information. It just gets very technical very fast, I think is the part of the challenge, right? Like this part is really good that they know exactly how many you can buy, show you the price and what products you're buying. What I'm missing is why should I buy X versus Y unless I read exactly what the product name says. And with my background, hopefully I can figure out which one makes sense for our requirements. So the requirement to solution mapping, I think, is the piece missing even when they have a configurator in one of these particular products.
Yeah, it's a lot of information there on the right-hand side, especially, and a lot of very similar specs that you're having to kind of sift through as a buyer and figure out, okay, which one's which, and it's a tedious. You're putting more burden on the buyer, it feels like, than actually making their lives easier. And to your earlier point too, even to get to this configurator took a lot of work, right? It took a lot of effort, and you could probably get to the original product detail page and not even know that this configure and quote and buy option is even there, right?
Exactly.
So just guiding people to that earlier is something that's interesting. So last thing here, Fazil, before we wrap up, like what actually happens here when you go to checkout, so to speak? Do they offer the ability to actually transact here? Are you able to request a quote that the team gets back to you on, or how does that work with a product like this?
Well, let's go for it. We'll see how that goes. So I think the experience probably needs to be a little faster in general would be my first comment, because this is where it's hard for me to expect a website really working if it is taking way too long. Now, partly these are complicated products and these are B2B sales, so there is some difference in expectation, but as I think Blake, you and I have been talking about for a while, the expectations are becoming much more converged, and people expect consumer grade experience, and this, you're used to Amazon, right? You don't want to wait this long for, even if you have to do a lot of stuff behind the scene. So
Right.
A lot of benefits for even B2B companies is how can they shift the work they have to show to the user, do it more in the background rather than doing it all for the user to wait.
Right.
But now that I'm here, I think I have my estimated total. I'll not put promotion codes. If I do a checkout, this is where I think you can actually register. If we want, we could go through or we can do a guest checkout, which is good, which is very e-commerce-y like.
Yeah.
The challenge there is the guest checkout wasn't really a guest checkout. So it is a little bit misleading because it's like I can put the information and then it says speed it up. But it's not obvious to me that, I have to add all of that. But it does look like you can actually pay. Now, I'm not looking to spend $6,000 today, so I'll not check it out finally. But they do provide you an e-commerce experience for some of their products, which is a very good thing, very positive thing. And for other products, as I think we saw during the buy workload, they do get you to a point that we can request the information.
Right.
The piece which is hard for us to gauge from a sort of outside in is what information gets shared to the seller or to the partner who's going to fulfill this order. Right. Hopefully there is a lot of information being captured, but with many companies we see there is a lot of opportunity also that they can send a lot more information of what the user wanted to do, so that the conversation becomes much richer when the seller reaches out to them, right? It's like knowing your customer becomes that much more productive and also helps in closing the sale ultimately.
Yeah. Awesome, Fazal. Well, this was great. Thank you for doing this walkthrough. I think one of the main things I took away is, especially for companies that have a complex and diverse set of products like this, just the ability to guide buyers to the products and solutions that meet their requirements and meet their needs is crucial, because it took us a lot of clicks to get to even that last page that we were on. So how do you get folks to that faster in a way that fits their needs? So thanks again, Fazal. Appreciate the consult here, and we'll talk soon.